Hey everyone, I just want to give a quick shout out here to our sponsor, RX Smart Gear, on the Clydesdale Fitness and Friends podcast. Any of you who know me well or have listened on the podcast know that I've struggled with my double under journey since I started doing CrossFit about 8 years ago. I started learning the skill by using a speed rope, a very thin, small-handled speed rope, and I started to develop really bad habits with that. I could never get the timing down. So I started with donkey kicking and then piking while I was jumping. And then I would just get so exhausted just because I was so tense while trying to learn that. When I finally switched over to the RX Smart Gear rope, I got a little bit of a thicker cable, which helped more with that timing and learning the cadence of it. And then the handles were so much more comfortable to be able to kind of focus on. And one of the cues I always like to use is like I'm flipping over pancakes. And so those handles made that much more comfortable for me. I'm not a girl that's into a lot of gear for doing CrossFit, or, I'm not somebody that needs to have a gear for this particular movement and this movement, but the jump rope is one thing that I recommend for all athletes that I coach and just other friends who are working on trying to improve their double under. So shout out to RX Smart Gear, and it's definitely helped me, and I hope it helps you. If you're looking to purchase an RX Smart Gear rope, you can use our code, which is Clydesdale 15, all caps, for 15% off. That does not include limited editions or new releases. All right. See you next time.
Record on this computer. There you go.
There you go. Okay.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't just say, how was your week?
I tell you, it was obviously it was fantastic, but beyond just being successful, I think everyone who was there can agree. The fact that there were only 10 athletes, the fact that there were only 10 coaches, the fact that we were in a bubble, the fact that, the tumultuous times that we're in, I think all of us just feel extremely honored and grateful to be able to experience what we experienced. Because hopefully, I say hopefully because the world hopefully will be in a better place for the next games. But I assume that experience will be kind of a once in a lifetime thing for all of us. And I don't think that it should be acknowledged lightly. I think we all are extremely grateful that we were there. And the way it turned out obviously was incredible, but regardless of how it turned out, it would have been an extremely special week simply because of the circumstances. So.
Yeah. And it's funny, us as fans of the sport, we were sort of going into this game season, sort of knowing that it was delayed a few times and things were changing, that we kept saying, like, does there need to be an asterisk on this year? And, are the winners really the winners? And I think after experiencing it, it's quite the opposite. And that, there's an asterisk on it, but not because it was easy or, a slam dunk, but more because it was probably the most challenging for those 10 athletes and so unique. So the fact that we got to experience that was just super, super cool, off the charts.
Yeah, I agree completely. I don't think there's any question. After phase one, obviously that was a cool experience too, and we can go into that. But phase two was, just the whole vibe. Being there. I think there was times where, when we first got there and everyone had to be tested for COVID. Obviously, everybody feels okay, but you're not sure. I mean, you're seeing all these tests coming back positive from people who are asymptomatic in all these other sports. You don't want to be that person, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to put anyone else in jeopardy or at risk. So when that came back, I think that was, everyone could breathe a sigh of relief there. And then obviously once the competition started, it was just special being with everyone. I think a lot of the coaches, I had spent some time with some of the coaches. Obviously, Shane and I actually have spent a lot of time. We usually hang out a lot at these competitions, but I hadn't been able to spend a lot of time with Max, Noah's coach, and Adam, Justin's coach, and just being around people and bonding. And then obviously, the relationships that you have or that you make, with the athletes and whatnot. It was amazing. And I thought CrossFit should be commended for really sticking to their guns and allowing these athletes to compete. You know, the fact that they gave them an outlet to compete during this year when it would have been easy to say no. You know, it would have been easy to just be like, okay, let's fold up shop. Let's come back next year. The fact that they stayed committed to it and they gave them this opportunity was incredibly special. And, you know, I've said it now for the past few days, we really can feel the difference in the regime. I think a lot of us were extremely, and I know I was, and especially with the box that I own, we were kind of on the fence as to what we were going to do, whether we were going to disaffiliate or, you know, we rebranded to Dynamics Fitness as opposed to CrossFit Dynamics during everything that happened with Greg. Getting a chance to meet Eric and spend time with Eric and also with Dave this past week and see the difference in the way we were treated as coaches, because I think in the past CrossFit has been extremely disrespectful to coaches. But I think this week there was a change, and I'm hoping that we will continue to see that change moving forward, and we'll see the evolution of the sport in a positive way.
Yeah. And I think we, as, you know, as athletes, amateur athletes of the sport too, I think we're all hoping that change continues for sure with the next season.
Well, and I have a quick follow-up to what he just said. Justin, I've worked security at a lot of the regionals before. And I know that, like, we weren't allowed to let coaches back in Athlete Village with the athletes. And it just didn't make a lot of sense to me working that door to Athlete Village. Is that what you're saying, that the climate change is a little bit different?
So in the past, and I've been extremely outspoken about it, and it's cost me a little bit as far as my relationship with Dave and HQ. You know, also my relationship with some of my athletes and defending some of my athletes in the past. But the phrase spectators with limited access, right? That's the phrase that would always be thrown out in every email from HQ about coaches when it came to competitions. You guys are, quote unquote, spectators with limited access. Tell me another sport where they're going to send an email to the coaches of the elite athletes in the world in that sport, and they're going to tell them, you guys are spectators with limited access. And it was a kick in the nuts every time we would get that email, and it would get worse and worse every year because the limited access would become more and more limited every single year. And frankly, it was, to me, it was a sign of disrespect, not just to the coaches, but also to the athletes. Because, you know, if you want your athlete to, or you want these athletes to compete at the highest level, and you're not going to give them access to the coaches, which is only going to help, it just never made a lot of sense to me. And I always felt like it was a power play. You know, this is your place. You guys are over there. You know, you have to buy your own tickets to get in. You've got to, you know, you can't, there's no viewing area for you. So you're back there with the athlete in warm up area. And then when it's time to go watch, there's nowhere to watch. There's nowhere for us to go and watch. And so I think, you know, the access this year, especially and obviously in phase one where we were right there. And then at the games, you know, there were still some times where I felt like the ball was dropped and we could have gotten a little more access, but honestly, compared to the past, it was phenomenal. And I hope that it continues to get better. Because like I said, I think if you're going to consider yourself a professional sport, then you've got to act like one, and you can't just, you know, you can't just pick and choose to make these arbitrary rules. And one of them is the way they treat coaches, you know? So
in layman's terms, it's like telling a baseball manager, you can hang out with the athletes in the batting cage, but when they're out on the field, they're on their own.
They're on their own, and you got to go sit back in the locker room. Yeah.
Right.
Go sit in the locker room. You don't have any, you have no in-game effect on them whatsoever, right? So it's all preparatory, and then when they get out there, they're on their own, and then you don't have any access whatsoever at any point. So I thought that the difference there in these games was fantastic, and I felt like there were definitely specific points during the competition where, not just for Carrie and I, but for the other athletes as well, there were specific points where getting a coaching cue or getting that support that you need was enormous. I think there were times, that you could see it. And I specifically in Atlanta for us, I felt like, she probably wanted to kill me halfway through it. And she did say that to me. But she also said, but I heard you, and I knew that Katrin, that Kat was gaining on me and in the pull-ups, and I knew that I had to pick it up those last 50, and then I knew I had to just essentially go for broke on that last mile. I mean, I just had to go, and so that's an example where I think it was huge for the athlete to have.
It turns out she listened to you on that too.
Yeah.
That's even better.
Yeah. She usually does. She's pretty amazing. So
Carrie's performance in that Atlanta will probably go down in history as, one of the most incredible moments in our sport.
Yeah.
Along with her performance in Mary in 2019, right, where she beat all the guys and just was incredibly poised during that whole workout. So tell me what was going through your head when she's in 5th place and you're looking, down the tunnel of this workout and it's announced. And it is, basically Murph and Mary, 2 of the things that she has won at the CrossFit Games. How much of a gift did that feel like?
After the morning session, when we knew those 2 workouts were going to be the toughest for her all weekend, in my head, I was like, man, he was bound to throw us a bone at some point, right? We hadn't gotten handstand push-ups all weekend. We hadn't gotten ring muscle-ups. We hadn't gotten, pull-ups. We hadn't gotten a lot of the skill stuff that Carrie is known for, obviously. And she was still hanging tough. And obviously, we were second going into that 3rd day, and we just knew those 2 events were going to be really challenging for us. She hadn't had a 5th place finish all weekend, and those 2 events, she gave it her all, but they're just truthfully not in her wheelhouse. Swimming is something we've worked hard on, but it's compared to the other athletes, she's not a strong swimmer. And sprinting and pushing a sled, she's just not. She's not extremely. She's an incredible athlete. I want to say she's an incredibly powerful athlete. And that event, she struggled with the sprint last year, and she struggled with the sled last year. And as we've worked hard on that stuff. But when you're in the top 5 at the CrossFit Games against women like Tia or Brooke, who are extremely powerful, you can see the difference there. So when, but to be perfectly honest with you, she was in a phenomenal mind frame the whole time. She never got down on herself. We knew that it was going to come down to the last workout essentially all weekend, right? We had an idea that Tia, if Tia does what Tia does, Tia was probably going to be out front. And then the podium was probably going to be in reach for everybody else, and it would come down to the final workout. That's just the way the point scheme was this year. And we were sitting in the ranch, in the barn, and he came out and Dave, was talking about kind of how they came up with this, and he started talking about Murph, and then how they then took out the inside and then plugged it back in with Mary. And I think both of us just knew that everything that we want is right in front of us. Now you just got to go take it, right? That's it. You got to take it, and but you still have to do it. You have a workout that's great for you, but so what? There were plenty of workouts I'm sure that some of the athletes thought were great for them this weekend, and then it turns out the performance wasn't, you didn't execute. And she still had to execute, she still had to do the things necessary after doing 11 other events the last few days. The oldest athlete on the field, she was the oldest athlete in the top 5 on the men's and women's side. So, you never know how you're going to recover, how you're going to feel. But, if there's one thing I know about Carrie is that she's the most mentally tough and physically tough athlete that I've ever been able to coach. And, and I've had the privilege of coaching a lot of games athletes over the years. But she may not be the most talented, but she's the most disciplined and tough. And I think that's what you needed to be on that workout. You just had to be tough because you knew it was going to hurt and you knew it was going to be a grind. But if you want to, create that legacy for yourself, and you don't know how often you're going to be in that opportunity, right? Like, you don't know how often you're going to have that shot at the podium. Last year, we went for it and she slipped off of the rings and it cost her a podium spot. And you're there again, and you don't want to end your career saying that I didn't give it my best shot and I didn't try as hard as I could. Even if I fall down, even if I don't succeed, I have to go for it. And I think we knew at that moment, like, okay, we've got something we can sink our teeth into, and now, we got to go for it.
Yeah. She definitely, does well with adversity. Talk a little bit about, you guys were in New York when COVID hit, right? And you made some pretty big changes, presumably for her.
Yeah.
So how did that all shake out?
Yeah. So I own a box in New York, CrossFit Dynamics. We've had a lot of success in the past, at the games with teams and athletes and such. But, New York was hit incredibly hard with COVID. I mean, just like everywhere else, but, New York, we were shut down and there really was I would say there was no end in sight as far as, when these shutdowns were going to stop. And, my wife and I, we have, so the week the pandemic hit, we also had, my wife gave birth to our son. So the pandemic hit, our business was shut down, and my wife gave birth to our son, Jackson, the same week.
No big deal.
No big deal. So, we were trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? And you start to see, what's happening with the box and, we live in New York. Cost of living is expensive, obviously. We really racked our brains as to what we wanted, what we, could do as far as what are we going to do with the box? We've owned this business for almost 10 years. We have an incredible community. We don't want to give up the community. We don't want to let them down. We're also losing 5 figures a month. So what's the best case scenario? It's interesting is we were talking and so one of the athletes that I coach, you guys have had a chance to speak with him and that's Ryan Elrod. Mm-hmm. Ryan and I were just kind of talking one day and I was venting about what was going on in New York and Elrod was like, whoa, well, why don't you just move out to Vegas? And so my wife and I kind of looked at each other and we were like, well, we have a GM in place. We started to seriously kind of take a look at, okay, what if New York comes back, but then what if New York gets shut down again in the wintertime and we're quarantined with a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old? Well, at that time he'll be 10 months old. But with a baby and our daughter is under 4, and our rent where we're living is extremely high. Our cost of living is extremely high. So we really, I took a trip out to Vegas and I looked at places and we kind of crunched the numbers. And to be honest with you, it was a bit of a no-brainer for us. We were able to, salvage dynamics, because we were able to cut the draw that we were taking. We were able to cut expenses. We really streamlined a lot of things there. And then we were able to cut our cost of living by like 40% by moving here. Plus, I mean, I don't know if you can see it right now, but
Yeah.
this is every day. It's, so, and we were able to be outside and we're able to be, for the kids, it's pretty amazing. We have, a beautiful house. And so, so we had sat down and we talked to Carrie about it, and Carrie was planning on moving out to Queens to be closer to us because she was on the Upper West Side. And I said, Carrie, this is what we're thinking of doing. I said, I think it would be beneficial for you too. Vegas we're close to Mount Charleston. It's at elevation. There's all these phenomenal things. There's not really much holding you here. What do you think? And it took her about 5 seconds. And she was like, oh yeah. She's like, let's go. So we made that decision in July. We hopped in 2 cars, my wife and I, and 2 cars, 2 kids, drove cross country 6 days to Vegas. Moving company met us out here, and it's been great. I miss New York, and I miss the box, and I miss our community. But unfortunately, Nevada's on the quarantine list in New York, so I can't even fly back right now. But my plan is to go back and forth, and my plan is for us eventually to open a Dynamics Vegas. So there's a lot of stuff in the mix. But as far as training is concerned, I think it was great for Carrie because she was able to come here, and CrossFit Culmination has been amazing in hosting, her and some of the other athletes that I coach actually have come out and been able to train with her. And obviously Elrod's there, and Elrod and she have been training partners. And of course, it's unfortunate for Elrod, the games got canceled for Masters. But I feel like for him, it was pretty awesome that Carrie came and he was able to be a part of her success for the season. Because he's such a good dude, and he's really had kind of a shit burger as far as luck is concerned over the last several years with the games, and I really felt like he had a good chance to win this year. So that was, but I like I said, I think being there and being Carrie's training partner and being able to be there for the stretch run with everything. And he tested a lot of the workouts for us, especially in phase 1. So he was an integral part in her success as well. That was a very long-winded answer to the Vegas question, but anyway.
No, that was great. I wanted to make sure we got to sort of the nuts and bolts of, the last few months of your life before we start sort of digging into the past a little bit, because you've got a very cool past. I refer to you as the best dressed coach in the world. I'm a huge Grid fan, if you can't tell, and a Brawlers fan at that. So I live in Delaware. So Chris Clyde, is an athlete that I see very regularly. Vinny Casey is a buddy of mine. And I've been a Brawlers fan forever. So
brawl out, baby, brawl out.
Yeah. I tried to find my little bracelet. I couldn't find it, but I still have one of those as well.
Yeah.
So take us back to sort of prior to coaching. We're like when Dynamics first started back in 2010. 10? Okay.
Yeah. End of 2010, we affiliated. We opened into a really small little space. We were Dynamics Gym first, and then we expanded to be CrossFit Dynamics. It was a cool time. I had transitioned. I don't know if you guys know, I was a professional recording artist. So I was a singer for 10 years. And
we've checked out your album.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's really good.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It feels like a different life, but it was cool in the sense that, fitness. I played college sports as well. I played basketball, and I was also captain of the golf team at the University of Pennsylvania. So I played athletics my whole life. And I was even as a singer, I was big into fitness and always training. And so when I kind of transitioned out of fitness And a buddy of mine and I really got heavily into functional fitness. We got big into like CrossFit when it was nobody knew what was going on. And also there was a website called Jim Jones back in the day. That like Mark Twight and those guys were doing a lot of like power endurance training, and it was all the guys from the movie 300, they did that training and stuff. So we were doing that, and then we ended up working in a Globo gym back in 2008 and coaching. We taught a class. They would only allow us to do functional fitness 1 day a week at midnight on Thursday nights. It was called Midnight Madness, and we developed a little bit of a cult following. Myself and my buddy Steve Service, who's a great coach in his own right, and I started coaching people in that style, and then eventually I just got tired of working for people who still thought the world was flat. So I went out on my own, and my wife now, at the time she was a friend, and she was one of my coaches. And then we our romantic relationship developed from there. But it was incredible. It was incredible at the beginning. We had this mantra. Our motto was change your fitness, change your life. And we quickly developed this incredible community in Astoria, New York. And what I also wanted to do, though, was I had a very clear vision that I wanted to create an incredibly close community and family, but I also wanted to create a very, very elite competitive feel in the gym. I'm an unbelievably competitive person. It's just my nature. And I at the time was already pretty broken as an athlete physically. I'd had 3 knee surgeries on my left knee from basketball and golf, et cetera. And I did compete a little bit at the beginning. I competed on our team at regionals in 2012. But I was at that point already transitioning into coaching full time. And so I knew that my goal was to, have this amazing community, but also to coach elite athletes, to have teams that go to the games, to have individuals that go to the games, to coach athletes around the world that go to the games. And that started relatively early. I was on the first coaching team that I was on. I was, my buddy Steve and I helped coach a female athlete in 2010 who went to the games, who finished in the top 5. And then from there we started I started coaching a lot of athletes. A lot of people started coming to Dynamics. So
I'm curious.
Go ahead.
I'm curious. Do you have a coaching mentor yourself? Somebody that you look up to?
Yeah, that's funny that you say that. So when I was a kid, there was a bunch of us in the Broward, Dade County area who were kind of top high school athletes. He probably doesn't even know this. I don't know if he even remembers me. But the first coach that I had, who was a coach, not like you have PE class, but the first time I ever worked with someone who knew how to squat and knew how to coach someone in Olympic weightlifting, and someone who put me on a nutrition program, and someone who really had an effect on my performance as an athlete. He's the strength coach for the Miami Heat. His name is Bill Ferran. And he's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer in the strength and conditioning community. And he was my first coach. And I look back to the effect that he had on me as an athlete, and learning the proper technique, and learning, programming, and understanding that stuff, even as a young athlete, and taking it seriously. And I would say that was probably the first, now that if I look back at it. And then I would say, like I said, I think, my buddy Steve, who I just mentioned, more recently, who I think just taught me to kind of look outside the box when it came to fitness, and we kind of discovered a lot of things together, discovered how to do a lot of things, and discovered how to not do a lot of things. I look back at some of the programming from back then and you're like, oh my God, that's criminal. But yeah, I think those were the two big ones. And then I think, just trial and error at that point. And then I think you're inspired by everybody at that point. I think you're inspired and pick up things from everyone you meet, and all the different coaches, your contemporaries, and everyone in the field. And I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing coaches, and I feel lucky that a lot of the athletes that I was able to coach have now gone on out on their own. And, so I feel like I've got a little bit of that coaching tree now, and it's really cool to see some of those athletes that I was able to coach, who now are some of the elite coaches in the sport, like Dave Charbonneau, who's Forged by Zeus. Chris Clyde obviously is a great coach. There's so many of them that I was lucky enough to have, either as an athlete or by my side as a coach. Dave was my assistant coach for the Brawlers. So, but anyway, yeah, that's kind of how things started at Dynamics. And then our first games team was 2013. We came in 5th. And then I was also coaching some individual athletes at the time, and then Grid happened, and I'll forever be grateful for that. It's as good of a time as I've ever had coaching. It was probably the most fun that I've ever had. I mean, incredibly stressful, but just an incredible experience. And then the relationships we've made, the Grid family, I think will always be extremely strong. And from there, I got to meet so many incredible athletes, so many incredible coaches that I've now carried on those relationships throughout the years. And it was a very special, 3 years for sure.
Yeah, you got exposure to a ton of athletes too with those teams, and just all across the country. And I remember like Sam Briggs, was she on a Grid team, and Noah Olson?
So Sam had originally signed, but then Progenics told her they would fire her, I guess, essentially, like take her sponsorship away. She had originally signed with the LA Reign, so she ended up not doing it, but Noah did. He did his first 2 years. He did the first 2 years for the LA Reign. Actually, we almost signed him with the Brawlers, but his coach at the time was Dusty Highland, and Dusty was the first coach of the LA Reign. And Noah's hilarious, and I love Dusty, but Noah's funny because every time I see him, he'd be like, "Coach, should have let you sign me to the Brawlers."
Right.
The Reign did not have an extremely distinguished Grid record. They were winless in their time during Grid, but yeah, Noah and there's a million, there's so many athletes. I mean, people forget, like Matt Frazier, he was on the New York team, the first year, Annie Thorisdottir, all these unbelievable athletes.
They took a risk doing it too, right? I mean, like CrossFit was not happy about.
Well, CrossFit was not happy, and then a lot of the CrossFit sponsors. That was the big deal. Was the sponsorship? Specifically, I would say specifically Progenics was the one. That was the one that was really big at the time. That had a ton of athletes that just threatened to get rid of everybody. And I loved. There were some athletes who stood their ground. Lindsay Valenzuela was one of them, and there were a few others that were like, "Fuck you," we're not. I don't know if I can say that. Can I say that?
You can absolutely say that.
Okay, yeah. So she was one of them, and we had a few on our team, at the time that were really high profile CrossFit athletes. Marcus Hendren was one on our team who was a super high profile CrossFit athlete, but there were others throughout the league that stood their ground. And I think Grid would have been incredibly successful had they had a different business model and not spent so much money. I think if they had figured out the third year they figured out the third year the model they needed, but they had just spent so much money the first 2 years that at that time, I think the investors just weren't willing to continue to pump millions of dollars in. But I think all of us, especially the first 2 years, like I think all the athletes will tell you it was just an incredible experience. And a lot of the coaches will tell you that as well. And the relationships we made, my Brawler family are, they'll be some of my closest friends forever. So, it's been awesome.
I know a lot of coaches that have, great relationships with their athletes, but you seem to have a really special bond with your folks. I mean, very close, even though, you haven't maybe engaged with them in a coaching capacity, in years, that you still treat them like family. I mean, where does that come from?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it's one of the reasons why I've never had like a huge athlete roster. And I think part of that is just because for me, I can't help but get emotionally invested. It's just my nature. I think that when an athlete trusts their livelihood with you, you can't help but love that person. You can't help but feel a special bond with them. And I'm actually getting choked up about it. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I know just in interactions with, Khan, for instance, Khan's been through a lot in his career, and he loves you. And I could say that about so many, Taylor Stallings,
I too
loves you.
Khan.
Yeah, we all love Khan.
Yeah. Khan's like my son. I love Khan. And Taylor is like family. And I don't know. I just, like I said, I think that there's something about that trust. And I know, listen, there are some incredibly successful coaches who don't get that way, right? Like they have, it's more of a business relationship, and they still have, they still get the most out of their athletes. I don't know. I don't know how to do it that way.
Well, and there are other coaches too that are really close to your athletes, and it's creepy.
Yeah.
So you're not that either.
But here's what I think. I think when I think of like the base of the pyramid of CrossFit, we talk about the nutrition. When I look at coaching or teaching, I look at the base of that pyramid as relationships. I think you have to build a relationship with people in order for them to hear and receive the information that you're giving them. It's much easier to hear something, challenging and harsh from somebody who cares about you than it is to hear from some Joe Schmo,
Right. No, I agree with that 100%. And I think that trust is such a huge part, like I know, for Carrie, or for Khan, or for some of the athletes that I coach. And this year was tough. It was a tough year because, like I have several athletes. I had 4 athletes that qualified for the games this year, and it was taken away, and that was hard, for them. And I was so happy to be able to experience that, with them, and this idea that we were going to be able to go out to Madison as a family and be able to experience this thing that, look, it's a once in a lifetime experience. You never know if you're going to go back, and you reach the pinnacle of your sport, and then everything happened, obviously. And, but I think, that I just am able to create a bond with my athletes. They trust me, and I give them everything that I can. I know how important it is. I know that the window is short, for the athlete. I know that they don't have the shelf life. Their shelf life is only this much. So the fact that they're willing to trust me and put all of that confidence in me to be able to help get them where they need to get to, like I don't know. It fills your heart, and you can't help but feel, you just can't help but feel that love and that bond towards them. And I don't know any other way. That's just the way I am. So
Yeah, that's special. So you talk a little bit about Carrie, and we've agreed, and we've had conversations on the podcast before about how she's very underrated, right? Just sort of flies under the radar, but is so consistent. And you made a comment in a social media post a while back about the fact that, she's not, bearing her ass on Instagram, right? To get viewers and things like that. And now that you're, a father of a young girl, right? I imagine that that's even more important to you. So just unpack that a little bit for us in terms of how you feel about Carrie and her disposition.
So I talk about athletes, and I talk about, like, I always talk with my athletes about their legacy. Like, what do you want your legacy to be, right? Like, do you want people to remember you for your accomplishments on the field, or do you want them to remember you from bearing your ass on social media? I know, so my daughter gets to watch Carrie almost every day in the gym. And she gets to see someone who I feel is one of the special elite female athletes in the world. And not just special from an athletic standpoint, but special from every single aspect that you want someone to be as an athlete. She's genuine. She's disciplined. She's hardworking. She does everything right. She never says a bad word about anybody. She just puts her head down and does work. And I think that that's probably hurt her when that comes to the world that we live in right now, with the way social media is, and followers and likes and all that kind of stuff. I feel like, it's a travesty that the number one American female CrossFitter of all time now, it's not debatable now that she's finished on the podium. That's 5 top 10s, 3 top 5s, and a podium finish. It's not debatable that she doesn't have an apparel deal, that she doesn't have an equipment deal, that she doesn't have a shoe deal. Like, there's not one other athlete in the top 10 that you can say that about on the female side. Okay. But why? I don't know why, but I'll tell you, when it comes to someone who I want to be a role model for my daughter, like, she's the one, like, she's that person. And, I don't know. I say some controversial things sometimes. I don't, it doesn't bother me, because I'm just going to speak my mind. So at the end of the day, like, you do you do whatever you want to do, but just understand that, like, that's how you're going to be remembered too. Like, and if that's the way you want to be remembered, then that's fine. But I know that if it was my daughter, that I would want her to be remembered for her accomplishments on the competition floor. And that's what Carrie's going to be remembered for. And I couldn't be prouder of that.
100%. What's next for you two specifically? I assume you gave her a little bit of a break this week.
Oh yeah. For however long she wants. Yeah. She gets a break however long she wants. So she has a break as long as she wants. We're going to go out to dinner this week, which would be nice. Celebrate. I've just been decompressing the last few days. I'll be honest. These things always take a lot out of me. I'm
sure.
I'm just that type of person. Like, I just get completely wrapped up in it. And so emotionally and mentally and spiritually, physically, like my wife knows, I come back from these and I usually get sick. That's just the way it is. That's happening. It always happened in grid. It always happened in, the games and stuff. And, I have some other athletes that I coach that I'm, obviously still working with. And, I have an athlete who's currently out in Lake Placid at the bobsled, Kelsey Keel, who I coach, who's now, doing bobsled and we have a few athletes that I think are going to be moving to Las Vegas that I'm going to be starting to work with. Yeah, I think it's pretty exciting. I think we're probably going to have a pretty fit crew here, about 5 or 6 athletes. It's going to be, it looks to me like it's pretty cool. Like the way that I'm seeing things, right? You've got like Cookville, obviously you've got Nashville. I think Vegas is now going to be a spot. So, you're going to have like these different places that kind of become destinations, I think, for athletes to come and train and have a little bit of fun with, but I think it's awesome. I think it only elevates. I mean, look, geez Christ, look at Tia and Matt. I mean, oh my God, and I just think when you train with elite competitors, you can't help but raise your game as long as you go in without an ego and an open mind. Like that's the biggest thing, right? Like you've got to understand that some days you're going to get your ass handed to you, and that's fine. You got to understand that to be the best, you train with the best. Sometimes you get beaten by the best, and that's the way it goes. And I have that we had a really like nice glimpse of it prior to stage 2 with some of these athletes that came here, and I think it's going to be really exciting what we're going to have around here pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be fun to watch. You talked too about potentially, starting an affiliate out there, Dynamics Vegas. Do you have your sights on an affiliate cup challenge in the future?
So after 2016, we had a pretty high profile team, and I just felt like I kind of needed to take a break from coaching teams. It's a kind of a different animal, I did it with Grid. I did it with Dynamics, and melding all those personalities. It's hard. Is it possible? Sure. I think we need to kind of see what the rules are going to be. We have to kind of see where CrossFit's going as far as qualification process, what they're going to allow, what they're not going to allow. So, I'll never say never, because I love a challenge. But I certainly think that in the immediate future that, that we're going to look to just try to produce and create the best athletes we can in whatever sport that is. So what I'd love to do is create, a kind of a training hub that's not exclusive to CrossFit. What I'd love is to be able to create an elite training facility that, crosses all genres of sports and get some of the best coaches around to get in there and some of the best athletes around. I think Vegas is just lends itself to that because of the weather and also the different things we have with Red Rock and Mount Charleston and all these different things. I think it lends itself to that. So
that'd be great. You think we can get Con out there for it with you?
Yeah, he's going to come. Definitely.
Good.
I think he's definitely going to come.
We'd like to order a podium finish for Con in the next season. That's what we'd like.
We will try. We will try for sure. Yeah. Oh, I think you guys are about to see Rapunzel, who just decided to come out and.
Oh, look at that! That's a beautiful dress.
That's Halloween she's trying it on, her Halloween dress. That's Ivy. That's only half the costume. The other costume, so she's going to be Rapunzel during the day.
No, she's going to be Rapunzel turning into a werewolf.
Right. So yeah. She's going to be Rapunzel, and then Rapunzel turning into a werewolf.
I love it. And which one will she be doing handstand walks in?
She's pretty. I don't know if she's pretty unbelievable.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, it's astonishing. I'm in awe of my 3-year-old. She is. She's just a freak. Like, it's awesome. We could tell from a very early age that she had some gifts, and so we've just tried to immerse her, and she grew up in the gym, and She was doing, handstands and handstand push-ups like really early, and, strict pull-ups and stuff. And I mean, she just did a set of 10 strict pull-ups and 20 strict handstand push-ups. She's 3. But she, gymnastics wise, she's phenomenal. But I'll be honest with you, we got out here and on a whim, I was just like, maybe she'll like rock climbing. And she's a prodigy. She's a phenom. The last few months, we go to the rock gym like 4 or 5 times a week. She's climbing like 5.8s and 5.9s as a 3-year-old. She's doing things that like the expert climbers in the gym are just like, oh my God, you can never let her stop. But, and so we're just like, as long as she loves it, my wife has forbidden me to coach my own daughter, which I think is great. I think it's a great thing. So I'm going to be her biggest fan. And like I said, I think we'll just immerse her and let her see what she likes. I'd like to get her into a field sport just because I don't think there's any substitute for running as a kid, getting out and running. So soccer or something along those lines. So gymnastics, rock climbing, soccer, and then we see what happens. But yeah, it's inspiring, man. I just get giddy watching her. It's pretty awesome, So
Very cool. So
it's so fun being a dad.
Yeah,
it is,
especially
man.
a dad of a girl, I think, or a mom of a girl, I should say.
Yeah, she's like, oh God, I love her so much. It's awesome.
When should we expect Jax to be walking then? If he's what?
Jax is pretty unreal. He's ahead of where Ivy was actually milestone wise. It's astounding. He turned over at 5 weeks, and he's already crawling at 7 months and standing up. I would be shocked if he wasn't walking by 10 months. He's really ahead of the curve. And I think, just being around her, he's going to have to be a tough kid because she's an aggressive lover. So like, she just, she's definitely tough. So he's going to have to be tough to survive, which is good. But yeah, I think he's not going to be able to help but just kind of follow because she just is so active. So I'm sure he's going to be as well, which is cool. And hopefully he'll, I'm hoping the one thing that we haven't really kind of pushed, and I don't want to push, but my wife and I are both, musicians. My wife was musical theater, incredible singer, and toured, doing all different shows and stuff. And then, I have a musical background. So we're hoping that one of them will pick that up too. So Ivy can sing, but she doesn't, I don't know that it's in her core. I'm curious to see if maybe Jax will have it. So that would be kind of fun too. To have that, that kind of, I just think it's cool to have that, be proficient in the arts as well. It's pretty cool.
So since you mentioned your music career, did you just sing or did you play instruments as well?
Yeah. So I when I was performing outright, I was a front man. So I was a pretty good dancer and singer. I played enough piano and guitar to write. So I wouldn't say that I was a great player, but enough to be able to write. And I did, co-write or write all my songs, So
how do you come up with the group name Gravy?
Oh, wow. So that's cool. So I was the last ingredient of Gravy. Actually, Gravy was a band in Philadelphia. They were this super cool, like acid jazz funk band. And they had like this regular gig at this place called Martini's Lounge back in Philly. And I had just graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, with singing and with my career. And I did a show with the bass player and he heard me sing and he was like, hey, we're trying to go in a different direction, excuse me, with the band. Do you want to come and audition? And I went and auditioned and they fired their singer they had at the time and hired me. And the band at that time was a cover band. And then we went the original route. And the band was so good. We really, it was an amazing band. And it was just like most bands, didn't survive because it was a bunch of egomaniacs that wanted to, get all the glory and write their own songs. So I actually moved from Philadelphia with the guitarist up to New York. We signed a management deal in 2000, and then we were a duo for a while, and then he was kind of kooky and he left, and then I was a solo artist from like 2002 to 2009, and yeah, it was cool. I had an EP, I had a record that was on iTunes, it was on the charts in Europe, and did toured and opened for some really cool artists and did some really cool things. And
Is it true that you played at Donald Trump's wedding?
Yeah, so I was in an event band. We did
which wedding?
Trump. Yeah, the newest one. So we were at Mar-a-Lago down in Palm Beach. We did that. We did a bunch of we did a bunch of really cool gigs. Like did the Red Cross Gala Ball for the Prince of Monaco. I did that out in Monte Carlo. I did the CEO of Reebok, his 50th anniversary with his wife at their estate in Cape Cod. I did a bunch of crafts parties with this band. So I was like a hired gun for a while as far as a singer. Like I did a lot of commercials, did a lot of jingles, and I also worked in a bunch of event bands, and one event band specifically, which was a really elite event band. And great singers, great musicians, and we did a lot of really fun gigs. So
yeah. You have an incredible voice. I mean, it doesn't. I have a hard time marrying the voice and your face. Like
Most
it doesn't
people
sort
do.
of compute.
Yeah.
But
I would actually say you're kind of the precursor to Alan Stone, and you have that same vibe. You were probably around first.
Yeah, I think like I always like to say I was kind of Robin Thicke before Robin Thicke. Right? Like,
yeah, I can see that.
Like that type of thing. And it was even less pop though. It was even more like on the soul side of things. Yeah, man, it was fun. I had a great time. And I always say, like, people always like, why did you stop? And it was like, I love music, and I loved, there was no, listen, there's no better feeling on earth than being on stage and performing. But I just didn't love the music industry. And I didn't love what it was doing to me, and I didn't love the person I was becoming. And I felt like if I didn't make some significant changes, that I wasn't happy with where my life was going. And I made those changes, and I'm extremely grateful where I am now. It's amazing. This is now my stage, so it's pretty cool to be able to be able to still affect people, because I think great music affects people, and it affects, hopefully in positive ways, but it affects people, and it can make positive changes. And I feel like that's, something that we're still doing, and what we do at Dynamics, and luckily what I've been able to do with a lot of athletes. So
my last question is, do you still dabble a little bit just as like a relaxation type thing, or did you just turn away from it and all the way into the fitness?
I would say I dabbled, and I was doing both up until about 2015. And then it just became too challenging to do both, because I'm the type of person that I really kind of dive head first into things, and it's hard to get out of it what you want to get out of it, without really committing 100% to it. So I would say now I just, listen to music. And I don't, sorry, my 3-year-old.
I would assume the kids got a good lullaby or two though, maybe when they were babies.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And my wife and I will still sing a bit, sing around, we sang at our wedding. We sang our wedding song together, and
very cool.
And we will sometimes sing some stuff for people. A few friends have asked us to get up and do some stuff for their weddings and whatnot. But yeah, mostly just listen now, and music is just an outlet, like a stress you know, just stress reducing outlet, just listening. There's you know, artists that I love. I'm an old soul head. So, you know, Stevie Wonder and Donny Hathaway and Marvin Gaye and then a lot of like the neo soul artists from the 90s, like late 90s, D'Angelo, Maxwell, like that type of stuff. I'm just that's like stuff that, you know, to me I can still listen to, and it, you know, it kind of takes me away. So
Takes you back.
yeah.
Well, this has been a super fun hour. I
Cool.
really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
We wish you all the best. You're clearly super fulfilled in what you've been doing, and
Thanks.
we as fans of the sport just, you know, wish you the most success in the future. We'll be cheering on all your athletes, and we're really looking forward to seeing what's to come, you know, this next 2021 season.
Me too. I am also.
You've got to be one of the most interesting men I've ever talked to.
Oh,
Yeah, pretty cool.
thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
And I look forward to we'll do it again someday.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
hopefully
we're
we can
looking to-
see you in person, you know,
Yeah,
one
we're
of these
looking to
days.
do a team building. Maybe we do it in Vegas.
There you
Hey,
go.
come see us, man.
Let us-
I love it.
Let us know when Con will be out there and we'll be there.
Okay. I will. I will, Amy. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
You guys take care. Thank you so
You
much.
have a great day, Justin.
thank you,
Thank
Justin.
you so much.
You too. All right. Bye-bye now.
Take care.